Welcome into our first lab. In this lab, we're going to look over our lab environment for switching. We're going to configure VLANs. We're going to show how the VTP parameters are configured on different code levels of iOS switches and routers. And we're going to configure VTP and show you how it can pretty much propagate itself throughout the network and prove our configuration that we create a VLAN on one switch and it's propagated out to another. But first things first, let's look at our lab topology here. I have three switches in my lab. I have a 2950, a 2960, and a 2900 series switch that I use for breaking out VLANs when I do more in-depth and more advanced Cisco routing and switching topics. To kind of pull back the curtain on that, basically I have multiple instances of a GNS3 router running on this server, and it's connected via a VLAN trunk interface to this VLAN breakout switch. And then the VLAN breakout switch takes those VLANs and breaks them out to different physical pieces of equipment so that it looks like the router, the virtual router, and the switch on the other end of that VLAN breakout are neighbors. Now I've included the breakout switch, the 2900, in this lab so that you can see the VLAN configuration commands on older iOS hardware and also on Cisco routers. Now you probably won't need these commands for the exam. However, it's nice to know them because you want to actually be able to apply your skills to the real world, and in the real world you'll run into these older switches. I have one sitting in the wiring closet at my current employer. But enough talking. You see by the CDP tables that the 2960 is pretty much the root of the network, and it has the 2950 and the VLAN breakout switch connected to it. And the 2950 and 2960 were both wiped for this lab. In fact, if we do show VLAN on this guy, you'll see we have one VLAN. All the ports are in this default VLAN. We also have the FIDI and token ring network. It's unsupported on this particular hardware, but there are no custom VLANs. All these are the default VLANs that you get when you take a switch out of the box. The same thing over here on the 2950. We'll do show VLAN. There's our default VLAN and our 1002 through 1005 VLANs, but nothing out of the ordinary. The VLAN breakout, if we do show VLAN on this guy, you see that we have the same thing. You'll notice that since this is a different hardware platform, though, these VLANs are active and they are supported, whereas on the 2950, the 2960, they are unsupported, as we pointed out. So the first thing we'll do is go up to the 2960 switch, and I'll show you two different ways of creating a VLAN. One's not any better than the other, although the first method will give you the opportunity to configure some of the options for the VLAN initially, and in the second method you have to go back after the fact, and you'll see why that is once I show you here. VLANs are configured in global config mode, so the first thing we'll do is do config T. Of course, we are in privileged exec mode when we do this. You can tell by the fact that we have the pound prompt there. And we'll create a VLAN, we'll call it VLAN 30. And now we're in VLAN configuration mode. So if we hit question mark, we see we have a few options for VLAN configurations. We can set the MTU, we can give it a name, we can shut it down. Most of these configuration options are advanced even beyond the CCNP level. Even at the CCNP level, you don't cover most of these commands. However, the one option you'll want to define on most any VLAN is the name, just so you can identify it when you do show VLAN. In this case, we'll give this the name DMZ_hosts. And that's pretty much it for the VLAN configuration itself. We exit from here, and now we could go assign a switch port into this VLAN. For example, we could go into interface fast Ethernet 0/3 and do switch port access VLAN 30. And now this switch port is in access VLAN 30. If we do show VLAN out here now, if you'll excuse the fact that the output's broken by this configuration line, you'll see that we now have a VLAN 30. Its name is DMZ hosts. You'll see that's the name there. It's active and it's got fast Ethernet 0/3 in that VLAN. It's no longer in VLAN 1 because untagged VLAN ports can only be in a single VLAN. When you have a tagged VLAN port, that is called a trunk port, and we'll cover trunking elsewhere in the course. However, for the time being, I promised you a second way to create VLANs, and this way is a little easier, I guess, although it can also introduce mistakes into your topology that can be difficult to correct later on. But let's go into an interface configuration. For example, do config T, do interface fast Ethernet 0/20. Now you'll recall earlier when we added fast Ethernet 03, into VLAN 30, we typed switch port access VLAN 30 and it just took the command. What were to happen if we were to type switch port access VLAN 40? It tells us the access VLAN does not exist, creating VLAN 40. So it's helpful enough to create the VLAN for you. And if we were to exit out of config mode and we were to do show VLAN, there's our VLAN 40. It has a default name of VLAN 0040. It's active and it's got that one port in it. Now, like I said, it's kind of convenient when you're cutting and pasting configurations because it will create these VLANs for you on the fly. However, that can be a two-edged sword. If you have a typo, let's say you typed 300 instead of 30, it'll create VLAN 300 for you, and then you're left to figure out, well, why is this one host not communicating with all the rest of them? Oh, because they're in different VLANs. And if you're tired and it's late at night when you're probably most likely doing these changes, it could take you a little bit to figure it out. At least it has me on more than one occasion. So we'll pause right here. We'll pick up with VLAN configuration and VLAN testing in the next video.